Today we're going to talk about cancer, specifically about how to survive it. The reason some patients live longer isn't because they're just more worthy of life or because they're better. It's because they, wittingly or not, use more than one single silver bullet to heal. You may know that cancer kills us by outcompeting healthy cells. But how can we use this knowledge to actually stop cancer and to potentially fully cure it? This is almost impossible, and even if it is possible, it's one of the most difficult things to do. And in so many cases, outliving cancer seems more like luck than reproducible science. But here's the good news. Science hasn't been standing still over the last decades. By now, we know enough about cancer to be able to stop it from killing 95% of patients, if not even more. And it's all there in the literature. The problem is, it's just not yet made it into clinical practice. This approach doesn't use a single silver bullet. It uses deep biological understanding of cancer to attack every aspect of cancer which makes it dangerous. It has worked in literature and in our own coaching practice. For example, one client went from having less than 18 months left to live to having more than 5 years left to live within 5 months. And he went from stage 4 cancer with multiple metastases of the bone to stage 1 cancer with functional reversion of the metastases. So these metastases, where there was cancer in the bone before, have now reverted back to naive, new functional bone tissue. This is unheard of in standard of care. And in this video, I'm going to break down the 3 difficult to execute but conceptually very simple steps that make this work. By the way, I'm Merlin. I'm one of the co-founders of Marchwood. We've got over 120 citations backing up our claims. Plus, fighting and winning against cancer is what we do every day. With that said, let's get into the video. To stop cancer from killing us, there's 3 things we must do. We must stop cancer from growing, we must stop cancer from progressing, i.e. becoming more dangerous, and we must stop cancer from surviving, or better said, we must kill cancer cells. Why? Well, I kind of took this away in the intro already, because cancer kills by displacing healthy cells, so we want to limit growth. Plus, progression helps the cancer to spread throughout the body and to kill surrounding tissue of those cancer tumors and displace even more cells even quicker. And I think it's self-explanatory why we would want to kill cancer cells. If we can kill cancer cells, they won't be an issue anymore. Now, how we do this is precisely the content of this video. This video will be about the 3 difficult to execute but simple conceptual steps to help you outlive cancer and perhaps even fully cure it. So, step 1, of course, was to stop cancer growth. But what do we do? If we have a cancer cell here, obviously when it grows, it splits into 2 cancer cells. That's how cell growth works. And to do this, it needs nutrients. Now, I think it's very self-explanatory. We want to cut off the supply of nutrients to these cancer cells so they no longer can split, so they no longer can grow. And we can restrict these nutrients by abstaining from carbohydrates, because a lot of cancer cells, especially younger cancer cells, will use sugars to fuel their growth. And eating carbohydrates, which are always digested into simple sugars and thus spike blood sugar, will fuel cancer cells. So abstaining from carbohydrates is the number 1 thing we can do to stop cancer growth. So now we know how to decrease cancer cell growth rate. But this doesn't help us at all if the cancer is allowed to progress. Because if it is allowed to progress, it can escape this control of growth, which we have by carbohydrate abstinence. And this is where step 2 now comes in. Now, in step 2, of course, we want to stop cancer progression. If we look at the cancer cell here, where it lies on the spectrum of benign to malign depends heavily on the cancer cell, on its age, on its developmental stage. But most cancer cells over their lifetime will transition from benign to malign. Benign meaning they're very localized, and malign meaning they have capacity to kill surrounding cells, to invade the tissue and to metastasize, which is the spreading throughout the body. So what do? We stop lactic acid production. We begin with alkalization therapy and we attack signaling pathways which promote progression. Now, why do we want to do this? Well, lactic acid production, of course, acidifies the environment of the cancer cell. That's kind of in the name of lactic acid. And this acidity directly drives the progression and the aggressivity of the cancer. And it does so through various signaling pathways, which we can also directly attack. So how do we do this? We remove carbohydrates from the diet, because carbohydrates are always digested into simple sugars and make it into the blood directly as sugars. And these sugars fuel the lactic acid production, because these sugars are made into lactic acid via lactic acid fermentation. So abstinence from carbs makes a return here again. Furthermore, we want to begin alkalization therapy. Alkalization therapy is nothing more than just helping the body alkalize the acidity of the tumor environment, and thus neutralizing the dangerous effects of this acidity, which drives cancer progression. And then we want to attack the signaling pathways which allow cancer to progress and to grow and to kill and to metastasize. And we can do so by supplementing EGCG, curcumin, and or astaxanthin. And by doing all of these steps, we can stop this transition from benign to malign, or even invert it. I know, this is a lot, this is a ton to take in. So if you want help with implementing all of this seamlessly, and you want a framework to go by, we've put together this guide which shows our methods and how to implement them to extend cancer patient life expectancy. It's called Mosaic Method Guide, and you can get it for free in the description or on the www.marchworth.com/mosaic. So let's go back over how far we've come. So we've already decreased the growth rate of cancer, and now we also know how to decrease the progression or even invert the progression of cancer. We can now actually breathe a sigh of relief. We've slowed cancer progression, we've slowed cancer growth. That's a very, very good start. We've now come to a point where young and old cancer cells, benign and malign cancer cells, can no longer grow efficiently or do so much slower. And they spread much slower. But the killing blow comes with this third step. And to understand how we can kill cancer cells, we must understand that it doesn't matter what tissue and what cell type a cancer cell develops from or stems from. All cancer cells have dysfunctional mitochondria. So what we want to do is rehabilitate these mitochondria by abstaining from mitochondrial toxins and by supplying mitochondria with the nutrients they need. And why do we want to do this? Well, healthy mitochondria can initiate a process called apoptosis. And apoptosis is just a fancy term for cell suicide. And I think it's not very controversial to say that cancer cell suicide is something we should aim for in cancer patients. And rehabilitating mitochondria, successfully healing mitochondria and reactivating the entire capacity can do this. This can force cancer cells into suicide via apoptosis. So how do we do this? Well, this is where it gets even complexer. On the side of removing mitochondrial toxins, we want to eliminate quite a lot of things. We want, for example, to eliminate oxalates, which are found in almost all plant foods. Then we want to eliminate carbohydrates because of the negative effects that sugar has, especially when spiked in the blood. Then we want to eliminate prolamins, which are found in all kinds of grains and make the gut permeable and thus increase inflammation, which directly damages mitochondria and suppresses their function. And we want to do the same with lectins, which are found in legumes and do basically the same as prolamins. Then we want to eliminate chronic stress, because chronic stress decreases a lot of longevity and healing functions, which can help us kill cancer cells, rehabilitate mitochondria, etc. And then we want to eliminate rancid fats, which is produced by either high temperature frying or by long-term exposure to oxygen of polyunsaturated fats. And these polyunsaturated fats are of course found primarily in vegetable oils. And then we want to balance omega-3 to omega-6 ratios within the body, which basically means abstaining from vegetable oils because they have extremely high amounts of omega-6 fatty acids. And we want to use butter or other animal fats instead, especially where they're grass-fed, because that gives us omega-3. And if it is necessary, of course, we do want to supplement omega-3 just to balance out omega-3 versus omega-6. Now, on the side of providing nutrients for mitochondrial health, we have again a few things we do want to do. Firstly, of course, we want to supply the body and thereby the mitochondria with sufficient vitamin D3. Now, vitamin D3 you can get in sun or in supplements, it doesn't really matter, but it's highly important both in immune function and in mitochondrial function. So if we can improve vitamin D, we can improve cancer cell suicide by rehabilitating mitochondria. And then we want vitamin B2, we want iron, and we want copper. All three of these are found in meat. So if you eat meat, you don't need to worry too much about these. Then we also want sulfur, which is found in eggs, also in meat, but a lot of it in eggs. And then we want to provide a lot of fat, because fat needs to be metabolized by the mitochondria and cannot be metabolized in any other way. And this stimulates mitochondrial activation and utilization in all cell types. And we want to find this fat in the form of animal fats or coconut fat, because those are just simply the best fats because they don't turn rancid. Now, if this all seems to add just another layer of difficulty into all of this, you'd be absolutely right. I never promised that this would be easy. I promised that it would be conceptually simple. We have three steps, but each of these 3 steps is very, very difficult to implement. I warned you beforehand, and I'll stick to that. And this is precisely why we help cancer patients implement all of these steps into their everyday life seamlessly. So if you want us to make it easier for you as well, you can talk to us at www.marshwood.com/outlive, which is also in the description below. Now, if we go back to the primary goal of stopping cancer from killing us, now we can see we already know how to decrease cancer cell growth rate, we know how to stop cancer cell progression, even inverted, and now we also know how to increase the death rate of cancer cells by rehabilitating mitochondria. But before we close out this video, I want to give you a small bonus, because all of this has been so incredibly complex. What are the things you need to do right now to start outliving cancer? Well, what we want to do is to go into what we term specialized ketosis. It's basically ketosis without vegetable oils and with less plants. Ketosis is just a nerd word for a metabolic state where we use fats and where we have a lower availability of glucose or of sugars, and this means that lactic acid fermentation cannot happen as readily. This of course slows cancer growth and progression at the same time, so this is crucial. Furthermore, our specialized ketosis improves mitochondrial health by excluding such toxins like oxalate, prolamins and lectins, and including or improving the supply of nutrients which mitochondria need. So, how do we do this step by step? Well, if we look at what we need to eliminate from our diet, it basically comes down to we want to eliminate all sugary drinks, we want to eliminate all fruits, sweets and desserts, we want to eliminate all bread and rice, we want to eliminate all roots, beets and tubers, and we want to eliminate all of the plant food. Now, this last point is basically with a caveat, which is what we're going to get to at the very end. But what we want to base our diet on is meat, eggs, high-fat cheeses, and animal fats. Now, I said there was a caveat to this. We don't need to just eat meat, eggs, high-fat cheese, and animal fats. We can use in moderation coconut flakes, milk, fat, etc. We can use animal milk. We can use plants for texture and taste when it doesn't exceed 10% of our consumption and doesn't kick us out of ketosis. And this is important. It should not kick us out of ketosis. And of course, we can use spices. So the thing about not having any plant food in our diet isn't necessary. It would be optimal, but also doing it in moderation helps us with variability, helps us with actually sticking to the diet, and that makes us successful in the long run. But what if you are a vegetarian? What if you have ethical qualms about killing an animal? Does that just mean that you don't get to live longer, you don't get to heal cancer? No. Here's how you can adapt these steps to a vegetarian lifestyle. Basing your diet on eggs, cheeses and butter will give you everything you need apart from vitamin C and magnesium. It could also be that it just doesn't give you quite enough iron, but that remains to be seen. And the solution for this seems very, very simple to me. You can just supplement vitamin C and magnesium when doing a vegetarian version of the Mosaic method. Plus, eating coconut flesh and milk might even give you enough vitamin C and magnesium to not need supplementation at all. But only blood imaging or experimentation can tell you whether this is true and whether this works with just coconut or whether you need to supplement as well. So now we've also adapted the Mosaic method to a vegetarian lifestyle. Our mission is to help people, not to spread ideology of doing one or the other. We want you to steal, to take, and to use our Mosaic method and apply it to your life, apply it to your lifestyle, make it work for you. Because at the end of the day, it needs to work for you and you alone, because you are the one that's going to outlive cancer. So let's now wrap all of this up and let's go over precisely what we learned in this video. We of course went over how to stop cancer from killing us by doing 3 things. First, we want to stop cancer from growing. We learned how to do that. Then we want to stop cancer from progressing. We also learned how to do that. Then we learned how to kill cancer cells quickly. Plus, as a bonus, we learned how to take the first steps. And I think this is incredibly important, because if you take the first steps, even if those first steps are suboptimal, you can always iterate and improve those first steps until you have the entire Mosaic method implemented into your everyday life. If you don't take the first steps, there's nothing to improve, you don't progress. Now, if you know someone who would benefit from this video, feel free to share it with them. I really don't mind. And if you've made it this far, do remember to get the free Mosaic method guide on our website under marshall.com/mosaic. And with that, God grant you healing, God grant you health, and God grant you and your family a good life.